We're all strapped for time. I know as we go through our life, we tell ourselves how busy you are. And until you read what I have in front of me, and then you kind of think you're probably not that busy after all. Michael is author of 7 books. He's done 250 papers. He's on the editorial board of 10 international journals. And he's going to talk to us today about business of things. So I think with all that lot behind you, mate, I think it'd be pretty tough. His interesting fact is the honorary consul for Germany, and he's part of the opening ceremony of Oktoberfest. So we should all be very grateful to this man. It seems like the alcohol section somehow, but there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael. Yeah, Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon. So I'm used to that people have a beer after my talk. It's the first time that I'm following drinks. I'm glad to be here, and I want to talk about how you do social marketing for IP-intensive products. So as an academic, you have to work out, well, how do I promote our ideas? And one thing we do is you create new terms and new ideas. So one thing I want to introduce is the notion of business to think. So let's go into this. So what's wrong with this picture? And our Wansley will say, hopefully she listens to my podcast, and Virginia will regret that it's not a vodka cruiser that she's drinking. But what's wrong here? He's not driving here, so she shouldn't probably drink and drive. But 1 in 4 accidents, as you know, is caused by mobile distractions. And when we talk to the 16 and 18-year-olds and said, why are you so easily distracted? It said, what do you mean? The distraction is not me looking at my phone, it's driving. And what it shows you, and they were not joking, yeah? And so what it shows you is that physical and digital coexist, and it's not that physical is more important than digital. So if you date your girlfriend and she's looking at your device all the time, and her device and not at you, it doesn't mean she's distracted. The digital world is just much more interesting than you are. And so what we need to work out is we need a new mindset. I call this the digital mind. And so if I'm 10 or 11 and I'm used to spending my time on a digital device, driving is incredibly distracting. Actually, when you get a driver license, it's the biggest disruption in your life. What do you mean? You spend half an hour on your way to work, you're stuck in traffic, you spend 250 hours every year on just driving, and that's how you spend your life? Try to explain this to the next generation. So we start to delegate driving to our car. Now imagine you start to delegate different things to your car. My car tells me already where's the closest petrol station. I don't want the closest, I want the cheapest. I guess in a few years, my car on a Monday morning will negotiate the car insurance for the week. It rains intensively, find the cheapest. It will find a car park for me. So we're used to the Alexas and the Google Homes that the providers have. Why can't I have my own little Michael that delegates, or I can delegate things to Michael? So I call this B2T, a world where we don't put the customer first, but we selectively put things first. It's not about behavioral economics, it's about robotic economics, and you sell things, to an algorithm at the end of the day. So I want to talk you through that sort of idea. And what we see is this trend that in the old days, corporations mattered. And people were nothing. They had no identity, they took part in the life of companies, and you dropped your life everywhere. And for the very first time, this is changing. For the very first time, we put people first. And we call this the economy of people. People arrive with their own data buckets, and they expect that you take part in their life. And it's a very fundamental difference. So it's not about us internally optimizing, it's about us being as close as possible to the consumer. In the old days, it mattered how long did it take from getting an order to delivery. Now it's a question of demand occurs to I start as a company to kick in. We call this service latency. And what you see that digital-minded companies, they literally get very close to you. They crawl into your kitchen, to your car, to your house, to be as close as possible to you. And that's what we call a design-intensive environment. With other words, it's for the first time that companies try to take part in the life of people. And these might be busy people, and in parts, I might just want to delegate items to devices. So if I go to Europe, I say, hey, home, if you get flooded, call someone. I won't be here for 3 weeks. My home will now, before I know, they'll be flooded in 2 days. Hey, government or insurance company, Michael is overseas, send at least a bunch of students who can carry the TV upstairs. And so I wouldn't mind this. So I just delegate things to my device, in this case to a home. And so I'm quite confident that this is the intention of some of the digital companies that we have. Or in a historical context, probably you're all too young to remember this picture, but when the internet popped up, the idea was very much I can hide. Now, I think this conference is all about that this is not true anymore. We know before you know that you're a dog. And we know more about you than yourself. Now, the next wave is, you're not a dog anymore, you're just a device. And so it goes from the economy of corporations to the economy of people to, in the making, the economy of things. And on the other side of the conversation is a fridge, a home, a car, any sort of device that I delegated decisions to. And maybe this device makes much better decisions than I do. In New Zealand, there's a device called Frank. And Frank will change your electricity provider in a blink of an eye. I couldn't care less where I buy my power from. I delegated to Frank. Frank goes and said, Michael, no problem, I find the cheapest for you. This is today, this is not tomorrow. And so there's certain items that are convenience items that I happily delegate. Now, this requires a new mindset. So next slide. I want that you write down the next symbol. There'll be 5 symbols. Just write down the next one. And when you have the answer, just raise your hand. And what I want to demonstrate is, in that sort of world that is moving from an economy of corporations to an economy of people to things, we need to think differently. So just write down the next symbol. And whoever has got the answer, 1, 2, 3. So it's roughly 10% typically. Anyone's got a 5, 6, or 7 year at home, they all would know the answer by now. If you don't believe me, take a picture and ask them this afternoon. Send me an email if I'm wrong. Anyone else? What do kids learn at school, even in Queensland? Writing and counting, yeah? Do you see it now? So what's the answer? Very good, yeah? And so the challenge is we're so in our mindset of running a certain way that when things pop up, we can't change the way we let's say, run, in your case, marketing. So what I encourage you is press the reset button and ask yourself, if I do marketing in a world of B2T and not B2B or B2C, how would I do that? And that's requiring what I call a digital mind. And I want to take you through some of these ideas. Fundamentally to it, very simple picture. Below the line is what we call a hygiene factor. Hygiene factors are things that a customer expects. Take my own university. If we would start to stream our lectures live, yeah, so you're still at 6 p.m. in bed, but at least you can follow me live, our students probably would say, finally. Big step for QET, small step for mankind. And so a lot of innovation is like this, yeah? It takes a hell of a work for us. I was at Centrelink, and you all know MyGov, child support, ATO, One Digital ID. And they asked me, Michael, what do you think? After millions of dollars and years of work, big step for you, small step for Australia. And so the challenge is my customers are so reconditioned so quickly, they expect the world. And so a lot of companies are being busy on that red line, and when they're finished, what they deliver is what everybody expected. It's much harder to work above the line. So above the line requires complete new thinking habits. Again, take my own university. What could I do? Well, if I would be a software company, I would run degrees like versions. You got an MBA 2.1. And then you leave campus, but you're like a used car. The next day, you're already outdated. And you lose value. Now, how do I keep you up to date? Well, a year later, 2.2 comes out. I tap you on your shoulder. I take part in your life. You don't take part in my life. I know before you know what you need to know. So you better know and get your knowledge updated. And I would just streamline. We would be the only university in the world where students will never expire for the rest of their life. That was not a joke. And so that shows you how above the line, below the line thinking is very, very different. It's above the line thinking where the ideas come from. And that's where we call it revenue resilience. How do I remain relevant? Now, I take you through a couple of ideas, and I call this a digital mind. Even in my speed of talking, don't take you through all of those 8, but I give you a couple of ideas. What's a digital mind? And then I talk about the idea of B2T in more detail. So the first one is what I call share of digital attention. So in the old days, marketing or business was about share of wallet. Or if you're Pepsi, Coke, or my previous speaker, you talk about share of throat. And the share of digital attention is about how much of the time that you spend with your device is spent with me. With other words, why would someone like Google build a driverless car? Well, there are 1.2 billion cars in the world. If a car drives an hour per day, you don't drive anymore. That unlocks 400,000 years every year. That's Google thinking, yeah? 400,000 years just unlocked. I put a screen in front of you, 400,000 years of digital attention unlocked. So your question is, where do I unlock digital attention? So where do I make the cake bigger? And once I know the cake, how do I get a bigger slice from that cake? So that is the idea of digital attention. Most companies don't measure this. I think the audience here is well equipped, but most companies we work with have no idea what's the share of digital attention, a leading indicator to revenue. What has Tesco done on the left? Share of digital attention can be gained when customers are idle. So many companies we are working with say, above the line, we have to think outside the box. I said, no, that's not true. You don't think outside the box, you need a bigger box. When you've got a big box, you don't need a yellow wall, beanbag, palm trees, and design thinking and sandwiches with your customer. You just have a bigger box, and you generate ideas automatically. So we try to give companies and people bigger boxes. Part of a bigger box is idle assets. Idle asset means where's the customer idle, and what could I do with them? So in South Korea, people are too busy to come to the supermarket, so same idea, I come to you. Where are you? Well, you're waiting at the subway. Top items, you purchase QR code then before 1 o'clock and it gets delivered. I find you where you're idle. Busiest branch, Royal Bank of Scotland, is the 7 o'clock train from Reading to Paddington. When people do mobile banking, they consider now having employees on that train. And so these are moments where you track down the customer when they're idle. I said to Virgin, if I would run an airline, I would, at least for people like me, have a haircut on the plane. The second one, the second idea of a digital mind is when searching is replaced with finding. So I remember talking to Google search engine and say, you've got an 89% market share. When would you ever get sleepless nights? What's the biggest competition? What's the biggest competition to the search engine? Anyone? What's that? Facebook? No, it's not Facebook. What's the biggest competition to someone who offers search as a service? Very good. Or let's call it easier to spell, finding. So the find engine. Most people don't know what they need to search for. So QUT, we've got a master's in biofabrication where we teach students how to use 3D printing for body parts. Now, most people don't wake up and say, let's have a look what QUT's master's in biofabrication is all about. We don't know what we don't know. And so when you have a product that a customer wants, but they don't know that it exists, they won't search for it. So searching needs to be replaced with finding. So products that are one step ahead of a consumer need to find their customers. But in order to find you, you have to trust me. So I need to somehow be able to approach you. And so when finding replaces searching, which is, I think, happening at the moment, search engines will disappear and find engines will pop up. And I can see how a new breed of organizations who will offer find search engines as a service. So this happens today. Yeah? If I crash my car, and it was expensive enough, my car will already notify the ambulance. They will try to talk to me, and depending on can I talk or not, there's a different type of urgency. And so this is where the think already takes over, and I delegated emergency services to my device, in this case, the car. That's happening today. So you see the same with all the other devices where I say, I want to be found if there's a health issue. We worked with a local water company, And I said, over dinner, nobody talks about us. We give people water, take care of the sewage, and then there's some payment. Bigger box, you remember, idle assets. Well, after lunch, let's talk about it. I get daily samples from you, but I don't do anything with it. If I would be a healthcare provider, I would be in fairyland. What we did is we built a smart toilet. Spin-off, 3 people, a couple of $100,000 venture capital. We know before you know there's a kidney failure, pregnancy, or just a hangover after too many vodka cruises in the family. So that's the idea, yeah? So I find you, and now before you know that you have a kidney failure in the family. And so this is basic patternized thinking that allows you, within the bigger box, to enter new ideas. Third one, so some of you might remember 10 years ago when companies talked about bring your own device. Now we talk about bring your own data. So people want to bring their own data. I guess in 5 years, you don't just store money, you store data at a bank. At the moment, we don't have a private data bucket. So I run with my Nike shoes, I've got a bank account, I study, I watch Netflix, I use Facebook, it's all over the place. In the economy of people, we have a private database, a private data bucket. And depending on the extent to which I trust you, get access or not. So I want to bring my own data into relationship. I trust my friends much more than I trust you. So what I want is, I let's say, get 3 products presented, and then I ask you, and who of my friends bought those products? So I can talk to someone that I trust. And you see this with organizations like Facebook, who first build a community, then they work out who trusts whom, and then they create products. It's exactly the opposite to what we heard before. Here's my product, let's find a customer. Many of these digital companies first create a community, and then they find the product. Anyone cycling, you probably use Strava. Strava, perfect example. Little app, attracts all cyclists. I couldn't care less about the app. I built social capital. My commercial value is the community. And then I make third-party revenue through everybody who wants to talk to cyclists. So again, it's the opposite of classical thinking. Customer follows product. In this case, product follows community. That's what we call social capital. So I want to bring my friends into relationship, or people that I trust, and then I want to use them in that context. My Wave is a spin-off in New Zealand, and they build Frank. My Wave is your private data bucket. Me.com is another one. We just rock up at an organization, and the lady that created My Wave, by the way, is a non-executive director of NAB. So this is not just happening in the backyard. Large banks are looking into that sort of environment. Next one, and it's related to this. How do we create an environment that gets better the bigger it is? So all those big digital companies work like this. YouTube, Facebook, Google Search, Tinder, and so on get all better the bigger they are. Most other companies don't. So how do I get an environment where I go from selling a product to capitalizing on C2C? Example, if I would be a car insurance company, I can do a lot of social marketing and talk you into my car insurance. I can use to the idea that instead of you, I talk to your car. I also can say, hey, I've got 4 million customers already. What could I do with 4 million connected cars? Could a car find a car park and offer this to another car? So this is when you go from red line to blue line. This is the only reason why big digital companies have a market share of 60 to 90%, while all the other companies are still hovering around on the red line, and then are surprised that they get disrupted. And so we talk about turkeys and butchers in this context a lot. And you know that turkey has a great life until Thanksgiving comes. Thanksgiving is a big surprise for the turkey, but not for the butcher. And so you want to be on that blue line to be the butcher, not the turkey. But the only way you do this is building social capital. And so what we need to do in the future, not just sell our product, but also sell the quality and services of the other customers I've got. That's what big digital companies are doing. This is not just B2C marketing, this is C2C marketing. If I do this well, I'm on that blue line, I'm beyond competition. Last idea, and that's the idea of B2T. when I start to sell to devices, to algorithms, to things, and all we think we know about emotions, behavior, feelings, doesn't matter anymore because these devices don't have any feelings. They just have algorithms. And all of a sudden, on the other side of the phone is a device, and not a human being. And so we are working as part of our research on these interaction patterns. And here are some of them. So we try to work out if the Internet of Things allows us to have such smart devices that we're able to work out, we could take part in this community, what do I do? Who's doing marketing to whom? And is the device talking to a customer? Is the business talking to the device? Like my smart toilet example, and depending on the outcomes, talks to the customer. So we try to work out, and here are some examples, what would that world look like, and how do you have to change the way you do business? So I'll make a whole paper available. We did 130 cases on this that takes us through a lot of details. But my key recommendation here is, if the Internet of Things really kicks in, and the economy of people becomes the economy of things, and they coexist, of course, we have to change the way we do marketing. And in addition to working with individuals who make emotional and sometimes unpredictable decisions, we need to work out how does the world look like when devices, on behalf of us, make those decisions. So these are all kind of things that could kick in, yeah? So we work with retirement villages, and they told us, well, if the pressure on the air mattress gets released, that means mom or dad got up in the morning. But if not, we have a problem. So it's again, I plug into a certain device, and the question is, what do I need to do? What sort of service do I want to offer? And so these are all elements, and these are all the patterns behind this that are worthwhile to explore. I know this is all a bit freaky and challenging, and there will be a lot of new jobs when it comes to security and trust and trusted devices. And do I trust the device more than I trust the human being that owns the device? But I just want to make sure that you're aware of all these things. And as I highlighted, the biggest roadblock to innovation is that we don't know what we don't know. That we go to bed with a smile, but we shouldn't. And I think it's important that we reconsider this. So with German precision, I brought you back to your timetable. These are just my finalizing recommendations. So ambidextrous, I know it's hard to spell, means you're below the line and above the line. But if I would be you, I would try to work out how do I develop a digital mind. Less understanding the technologies, but working out what can I do with them, and ask yourself, how would B2T or M2T look like? I like podcasts as well, as much as I like beer. If you want to follow us, go to Digital Week. Thank you so much.